Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. Let me tell you about the time I had to deal with possibly the most entitled person I've ever encountered. This happened about 2 years ago after my family and I moved into what we thought would be our dream home in a quiet neighborhood. When we first toured the house, the massive backyard was the main selling point. It was spacious, private, and practically begging for the swimming pool I'd always wanted. The real estate agent mentioned there was an HOA, but assured us they were reasonable and mainly focused on keeping property values up through basic maintenance standards. I'm the type of person who does their homework. Before signing anything, I thoroughly reviewed all the HOA bylaws, making sure there weren't any ridiculous restrictions that would prevent us from installing our dream pool. The rules were pretty standard. Lawn maintenance requirements, approved exterior paint colors, and guidelines about visible trash cans. Nothing about pools except standard safety requirements that aligned with county code. After closing on the house, we spent the first 3 months settling in and planning the pool installation. I did everything by the book, got multiple contractor quotes, filed for all the necessary permits with both the county and the HOA Architectural Committee, and had a land survey done to confirm our property boundaries. The pool would be well within our property lines, and we opted for a 6-foot privacy fence around the entire backyard, with a separate 4-foot non-climbable pool fence with a self-closing, self-locking gate as required by code. My background as a project manager means I'm obsessive about documentation. I kept copies of every permit, every HOA approval, every contractor invoice, and especially that property survey in a binder in my home office. This habit would end up saving my sanity later. The pool construction took about 2 months. During that time, I noticed a woman who lived 3 houses down would often slow down while walking past our house, sometimes stopping outright to watch the construction. At first, I thought she was just curious. Construction is interesting to watch after all. But there was something about the way she scrutinized everything that made me uneasy. One afternoon, while checking on the progress with the contractor, this neighbor approached us. She introduced herself as the HOA committee chair and asked several pointed questions about the pool, its size, depth, and when it would be completed. "It's going to be such a nice addition to the neighborhood," she said with an odd emphasis I couldn't quite place. "Everyone's been talking about it." I nodded politely, but didn't think much of it. "Thanks, my family's really looking forward to it." "I'm sure the whole community will enjoy it," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. At the time, I assumed she meant people would enjoy seeing it, not using it. I couldn't have been more wrong. The pool was finally completed in early June, just in time for summer. My kids were ecstatic, and we spent that first weekend breaking it in with a small family celebration. The following Monday, I was working from home and decided to take a lunch break by the pool. I was floating peacefully when I heard the unmistakable sound of my gate latch being tried. I looked over to see the HOA committee chair standing at my gate with a clipboard. She waved when she saw me looking and called out, "Don't mind me, just need to go over a few things about the community pool schedule." Confused, I climbed out of the pool and wrapped a towel around my waist as I approached the gate. "I'm sorry, what schedule?" "The neighborhood pool usage schedule," she replied, as if it were obvious. "We need to establish hours for different age groups, family swim times, adult-only times, standard procedure for community amenities." I blinked at her, wondering if this was some kind of joke. There must be some misunderstanding. This is a private pool on my property, not a community pool. Her pleasant expression faltered for just a moment before she doubled down. "Oh no, that's not how it works in our HOA. All significant recreational amenities are shared resources. It's in the bylaws." Now, I knew that was categorically false, having read the bylaws cover to cover. "I don't recall seeing anything like that in the HOA documentation. This pool was built with my private funds, on my private property, with all proper approvals." She waved her hand dismissively. "Those are just formalities. The reality is that in our community we share our resources. I've already drafted a usage schedule." She attempted to hand me a typed sheet of paper through the gate slats. I didn't take it. "I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen. This is my private property. I paid for this pool and I'm responsible for its maintenance and liability." Her face tightened. "Well, we'll just see about that. The board will be discussing this at our next meeting." With that, she turned and marched off. I immediately went inside and dug out my HOA binder, rereading every page. As I already knew, there was absolutely nothing about private recreational amenities becoming community property. Just to be safe, I emailed the HOA official address, not the committee chair's personal email, requesting written confirmation that my pool was, indeed, private property. The HOA secretary responded the next day, confirming what I already knew. My pool was my private property, and there was no provision requiring me to share it with the neighborhood. I printed this email and added it to my binder. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I woke up to find a laminated sign zip-tied to my pool fence. Community pool rules, followed by absurd regulations including all residents entitled to equal access, children under 12 must be accompanied by an adult, and most ridiculously, sign up for time slots in advance with HOA chair. I immediately took the sign down and snapped photos of it before disposing of it. That afternoon, I installed security cameras covering my backyard and pool area. Later that week, one of my other neighbors stopped by while I was mowing the lawn. Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. There's a post in the neighborhood Facebook group about your pool being a new community amenity and how people should contact the HOA chair to schedule swim times. Several people seem confused. I thanked him for the information and immediately requested to join the Facebook group, which was approved within an hour. Sure enough, there was a post from the HOA chair announcing the neighborhood's new community pool at my address, complete with a blurry photo taken from the street. She claimed I was being uncooperative about access, but assured everyone she was working on it. I responded to the post with the facts. This was my private pool on my private property, built with my funds, and there was no provision in the HOA bylaws requiring me to share it. I included a screenshot of the email from the HOA secretary confirming this fact. Several neighbors commented with support, while others expressed confusion about why they'd been told otherwise. The post disappeared within hours, deleted by the HOA chair who was an admin for the group. The next escalation came in the form of an official-looking letter left in my mailbox. It had the HOA logo at the top and was titled Formal Warning, Violation of Community Standards. The letter accused me of monopolizing a shared resource and violating the community spirit upon which our neighborhood was founded. It threatened further HOA action if I didn't comply with community access requirements. The letter had only the HOA chair's signature, not the entire board as required for official violations. I called the HOA secretary again, who confirmed no violation had been issued by the board and that the letter was not officially sanctioned. At this point, I'd had enough. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes and showed him all my documentation. He confirmed I was completely in the right and drafted a cease and desist letter to both the HOA chair personally and the HOA board. The letter outlined the harassment I'd experienced and made it clear that any further attempts to claim my private property as community property would result in legal action. I thought this formal approach would end the matter. I was wrong again. About 2 weeks later, on a beautiful Saturday afternoon, my family was enjoying our pool when I heard voices outside our gate. I looked up to see the HOA chair standing there with 4 children in swimwear and another adult I didn't recognize, all holding towels and pool toys. "We're here for our 2 p.m. community swim time," she announced loudly, reaching for the gate latch. I quickly got out of the pool. "What do you think you're doing? This is private property. You can't come in here." "Don't be ridiculous," she scoffed. "The children have been looking forward to this all week. We've signed up for the 4 p.m. slot." She continued trying to open the gate, which thankfully was locked. "There is no slot. This is my private pool. You need to leave now or I'll call the police." I was doing my best to remain calm, but my patience was wearing thin. She turned to the children. "See how selfish some people can be? Not willing to share with the community." The children looked uncomfortable, and I felt bad for them. They were clearly just pawns in her game. The other adult with her seemed uncertain, glancing between us. "Look," I said, trying to be reasonable. "You've been told repeatedly by me, by the HOA board, and by my lawyer that this is private property. You need to leave now." Instead of leaving, she pulled out her phone and, to my utter disbelief, called 911 right in front of me. "Yes, I need to report a resident who is denying community access to our neighborhood recreational facility," she said into the phone. "He's being aggressive and threatening me and these children. We feel unsafe." She continued giving them my address and describing me as if I were some kind of menace. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I went inside, got my phone, and came back out to record what was happening while I called the non-emergency police line to explain the situation. About 15 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived. The HOA chair immediately rushed up to them, speaking rapidly and gesturing wildly at my house and the pool. The children had been seated on the curb, looking bored and uncomfortable. One officer approached me while the other continued listening to the HOA chair's dramatic recounting. "Sir, we received a call about a dispute over a community pool?" the officer asked. "Officer, thank you for coming. There's been a significant misunderstanding," I replied calmly. This is my private residence, and that's my private pool, built on my property with my funds. The woman who called you has been harassing me for weeks, trying to claim my pool is community property. I have all the documentation proving otherwise, including confirmation from the HOA board itself that this is private property." The officer nodded. "May I see that documentation?" "Of course. Please come inside and I'll show you everything." I led the officer to my home office and presented my binder of documents. The property survey clearly showing the pool within my boundaries, all permits and approvals, the email from the HOA secretary confirming the pool was private, and the cease and desist letter from my lawyer. I also have security camera footage of her placing unauthorized signs on my property in today's incident where she attempted to access my pool without permission, I added, pulling up the footage on my computer. The officer reviewed everything carefully, then radioed to his partner. They conferred briefly before both approaching the HOA chair, who was still talking animatedly to the second officer. "Ma'am," the first officer said firmly, "we've reviewed the homeowner's documentation, and it's clear that this is a private pool on private property. You have no right to access it without the owner's permission." Her face contorted in disbelief. "That's impossible. All amenities in an HOA are shared. That's how it works." "No, ma'am, that's not how it works," the officer replied. "Property ownership is clearly defined by deeds and surveys, which we've reviewed. Additionally, making false statements to emergency services is a serious offense." "I didn't make false statements," she protested. "He was threatening us." The second officer stepped in. "Ma'am, we have video evidence of this entire interaction. The homeowner asked you to leave his property, which he has every right to do. You refused and made a false report to emergency services." The other adult with her had the good sense to look embarrassed and began gathering the children. "I think we should go," they murmured to the HOA chair. "This isn't over," she hissed at me before turning back to the officers. "I'm on the HOA board. I know our rules." "Ma'am," the first officer said firmly, "regardless of HOA rules, this is a matter of property law. The pool is on private property. If you return here without the owner's permission or continue to harass this family, you could face trespassing charges and potentially charges for filing a false police report." I decided to press the issue. "Officers, given the ongoing harassment and today's incident, I'd like to file a formal complaint against this woman. She's been posting false information about my property in community forums, leaving unauthorized signs on my property, and now attempting to access my backyard with children in tow. I'm concerned about what she might try next." The officers took my statement and information for a formal report while the HOA chair stood fuming. By this point, several neighbors had come out to watch the spectacle, and I could see them whispering to each other. As the officers prepared to leave, I asked, "What should I do if she returns or continues the harassment?" "Call us immediately," the first officer replied. "And I'd recommend following up with your lawyer about a restraining order given the pattern of behavior." The officers escorted the HOA chair and her group away from my property. As they left, one of my neighbors who had been watching approached me. "I'm so sorry you've had to deal with this," she said quietly. "She told several of us the pool was going to be a community amenity. I thought it sounded odd, but she was so convincing." "It's not your fault," I assured her. "But now, everyone knows the truth." The fallout was swift. The next day, I received an email from the HOA board president apologizing for the chair's behavior and informing me she had been removed from her position pending a formal board review of her actions. They assured me they were taking the matter seriously and asked for copies of all documentation for their investigation. I also followed my lawyer's advice and filed for a temporary restraining order against the former HOA chair, which was granted given the police report and my evidence of ongoing harassment. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Several residents reached out to share their own stories of dealing with the HOA chair's overreach and entitlement. It seemed she had been making up and selectively enforcing rules for years, but no one had stood up to her quite so definitively before. The ultimate satisfaction came about a month later when I received another letter from the HOA board. They had completed their investigation and permanently removed the woman from the board. Additionally, they had revised their bylaws to explicitly state that private recreational amenities remained private property, a direct result of this incident. As for the former HOA chair, she mostly kept to herself after that. I would occasionally see her glaring from her front yard as my family enjoyed our pool, but she never approached us again. About 6 months later, a "for sale" sign appeared in front of her house, and within weeks, she was gone. These days, my family and I enjoy our pool in peace. I've made some good friends in the neighborhood, People who were relieved to be free from the former chair's tyranny. We occasionally invite neighbors over for barbecues and swimming, but it's always on our terms, as it should be. I learned valuable lessons from this ordeal. Know your rights, document everything, and don't back down when you're in the right. Standing firm against entitlement might not be easy, but the peace that follows is worth every difficult moment. And that laminated property survey, it's still in my office, ready for the next time someone needs reminding that this land and everything on it is mine. The next one is a pro-revenge story. My grandma told me this story recently about how her brother got his ass kicked from the grave. Sorry for the bad English, I do not write it very well and I have dyslexia, so sorry if I butch the text. So this is the scenario. My grandma comes from a family of 4 girls, 1 boy. My great-grandfather, Hank, was ecstatic with the boy. We will call him Jack. One more important thing is that my great-grandfather ran a very successful company that made high-end clothing and bathroom silks/towels/bathrobes. He made a fortune with his company and made sure everyone who worked for the company got his fair share. He also looked after the family. All his children got an education. All his children got the chance to get their driver's license. It was in the 1960s, so it was a big deal back then. They were the first in my home with a car, radio, and TV. My great-grandfather treated everyone equal. That changed when his first and only son was born. He already had 4 girls, and now finally a son. The roadmap was laid out for him. He would be the heir to his company. So began the upbringing of Jack. He was, let's say, a kid with a mouth. This wasn't bad per se, the thing was that his father allowed it. Jack got kicked from his first school, Jack got caught for shoplifting, Jack got kicked from his second school, Jack got caught joyriding, and so on and so on. Hank did not sit Jack down and told him the severity of his actions, but he would shrug it and tell his wife, great-grandmother Anna, that it were just childhood quirks. Anna tried to make something out of Jack, but it was a lost cause. Jack became 18 and Hank decided that it was the time to introduce him into the company. The company did better than ever and the whole family was involved. Jack began at the bottom of the ladder and had to work his way up. This is where Jack began to shine. With shine, my grandmother meant that her brother was not a bright light at school, but he was a hard worker and had a nose for business. Not so much for people. Jack was being an ass as per usual and got married to his first Karen. His first wife was Karen. She wanted to start her own company, and her father-in-law Hank wanted to retire. She pushed Jack to take over quickly and push the rest of the family out. Jack listened to her and talked to his father how he was ready and how his sisters and their husbands were tearing the company apart if they would stay in their leadership roles. The thing was that only 1 daughter and son-in-law were involved in the company at this point, 1980. My grandmother oversaw the seamstresses and the quality department, and my grandfather oversaw the financial and the suppliers. Karen wanted full control and started a little fire in the family. She spread a rumor that grandfather stole from the company. I do not know what transpired, but in the end, my great-grandfather bought out all the family and Jack bought out great-grandfather. The company was Jack and Karen's company now, and things went tits up pretty quickly. Seamstresses quieted, bills were not paid, and Jack had to take a loan from great-grandfather. The family company was barely scraping by, and Karen left Jack because he could not provide for him. It became apparent that Jack could not make it work and was looking for a way out. After a while, great-grandfather had seen enough and bought back the remnants of his company and sold it to a bigger company that wanted to expand. This made the wealth he aimed even bigger. He did set up different banking accounts for his children and said that if someone was in need, they could take money from that account. He told Jack his cut was smaller, as he was the reason he sold the company and that he was let down by the carelessness his son had run his company into the ground. Jack was angry and told his father that he could make it work if he had more time. It remained a sour point between the two of them. Things went well for a while, but Jack married a second time with a woman named Helen. Helen, like Karen, wanted her own business. Jack agreed and took money from the account in order to start Helen's company. The business was a little barber shop and ran pretty well. They were spending their money on luxury and did not save any money. After a while, my grandmother got a call from her little brother Jack if he could store some good in her garage. My grandfather did not trust Jack and told him no, and grandmother did not agree, but they agreed to it. A few weeks later, Jack got caught for possession of stolen goods and drug smuggling. It was not a surprise, but nonetheless a letdown for my great-grandfather Hank. This time, he would not help Jack and told him that he would no longer stand behind him. After a few years, Jack got out and was again a divorced man. He married again and divorced another 3 times, and each time he gave these women a business and lived lavishly, new cars, big houses, expensive vacations. He drained his money and robbed his emergency bank account dry. He loaned a lot of money from great-grandfather and so on. In 2013, great-grandfather befell ill. It was clear that he was not going to make it and took his final days in stride. At this time, Jack became very buddy-buddy and started to help great-grandfather sell some stuff. At some point, my grandmother sat down with her father and asked him where the money went for the sold stuff, and great-grandfather told her not to worry about it. He took care of it in his will. After his 95th birthday, he passed away quiet and in peace. After her funeral, they all went to listen to the will of their father, all except Jack, who had given a power of attorney to my grandmother to sign the will in his place. All the children get their fair share, but at the end, the notary public tells them to sign the papers and the inheritance is completely theirs. At some point, my grandma called my dad. She has inherited some collateral papers, all sorts of papers that stated that someone owed my great-grandfather money. My father said that she has to call a lawyer's office to get the money from these papers. A few days after this call to the lawyer's office, my grandmother gets a call from her brother. Why was she taking his money from the inheritance? My grandmother tells him she has inherited some collateral papers, and that she wants to get the money from them. Jack was furious and told her that that was illegal. Jack was wrong. Great-grandfather had documented every penny his son had loaned from him and constructed his will in such a way that the rest of his children could get that part of their money from their money drain of a brother. Also, great-grandfather found out Jack stole from him. You see, Jack was putting the money he made from the sold stuff on his own banking account instead of giving it to his father. After this ordeal, Jack has not contacted my grandmother or his sisters. He has since then paid everything back and has never seen a penny from his inheritance. Great-grandfather has confided in a letter why he did this. He was done with his son, all the lying, the careless things he had done to his company, all the money he had blown and not taking any responsibility. He gave his final lesson to his son from the grave. The next one is an entitled people story. See a few people calling in sick stories, and this reminded me of a malicious compliance from my team. Many years ago now, but the gist is there. When I was managing a retail team, I had a call from one of my team while I was in an early meeting with the company owner. I answered it and put it on speaker, just habit. Me: "Hi Danny, what's up?" Danny: "Hey boss, not feeling well so won't make it in today." Now Danny sounds as chipper as can be. No croakiness or fatigue in his voice. Me: "No worries, thanks for the notice. Rest up. If you don't think you'll make it in tomorrow, make sure you get a sick note clearing you for work if you can. You're clear on the policy, right?" Danny: "Will do. Hopefully see you tomorrow. Bye." Hang up phone and go to resume meeting, and boss starts grilling me. He didn't sound sick. What's even wrong with him? Your team mustn't respect you. Blah, blah, blah. Now, while Danny wasn't our best worker, he was up there and the team and customers loved him. And him calling in sick was rare. And honestly, my feelings were a bit hurt by him telling me they didn't respect me. I wasn't long in that position, but I worked my way up there and they all knew that. Proceed to a debate that my team's stats were brilliant per what we were meeting about, that I disagree about them not respecting me because he didn't feel the need to put on a voice. And the reality was, what was the matter was irrelevant. He's calling in sick. He's sick. He'd never given me a reason not to trust him. I thought that was the end of it. Not quite. Next day, Danny comes in and the boss immediately calls him and I into his office. He starts giving Danny the talk. Commitment to the company, sick days are for when you're sick and unable to work, and how he didn't sound sick. Danny starts grinning and just pulls up his sleeve, showing a very recently bandaged arm. I'm not sure how I should sound to convey this over the phone. Should have I coughed? How many stitches does it take to give me a croaky voice? I burst out laughing. Boss, to his credit, took it in stride. He was usually a pretty good guy. Danny obviously told the team about it too. Now, whenever any of the team happened to call in sick when they knew I had a meeting with the owner, it went like this. Becky calls, coughing and spluttering. "Sorry, boss coughs again, won't make it in today. Another fit of coughing, child has gastro, so need to take the day off to take care of him, coughing continues." Mitch calls, very croaky voice. "Can't make it in. Twisted my ankle and need to stay off it for a few days." Bell calls, coughing, spluttering, fatigued voice. "Not sure I'll make it in today. Car won't start. Can I take Toil to arrange repairs today?" Cue the next staff, all hands, usually beers and a BBQ in the car park and talking upcoming changes for the next quarter, whereas part of that owner gives out a Best Acting award and also asks them to cut it out. I'm worked there for quite a few years. I knew the owner personally before I started working there. While the owner and I didn't always see eye to eye, he was usually a good guy, just had some bad staff and managers in the past, and definitely needed more coffee that morning. The next one is an entitled people story. I have a very small ranch in California. I used to own a brush clearing business using goats. I haven't done that in years, but I do still have 2 elderly mini goats. Yesterday, I got an email from a friend I've known since HS. We're both in our 60s now. She lives overseas and also has a massive house in Malibu with a lot of land. She comes from a family with a known name that was one of the wealthiest in California. She inherited millions she has never for a minute lived without. The email let me know that she was in town to deal with her Malibu house as her land was damaged by our recent fires. She asked if I could bring my goats over to munch on the brush on her land. I haven't heard from her in over a year. No talk of pay, no explanation. The email was written as though she was doing me a friendly favor, and it would be no big deal for me to haul 2 goats over to her place, spend a few days overseeing them eating, hauling them back and forth at night, as a favor, for free. I explained that my goats were old and that I didn't do that anymore, that the work involved with doing something like this was pretty extensive. No apologies were forthcoming. Instead, she was miffed and wanted to know if I knew anyone else who would do that for her. Undoubtedly for free. I told her I did not know anyone with goats. I do, but I'll be damned if I'm going to subject them to this entitled woman. She abruptly said thanks, and that was it. No. Let's get together. I'm in town. No. It would be nice to see you. Just let me use your goats for free. Why won't you do that for me? This same woman some years ago descended on a mutual close friend who was dying. She insisted on staying at the dying friend's house, taking up all of the woman and her family's time, energy, and resources to the point she had to be asked to leave because she was imposing so much. At that time, I had to cancel my long-planned and paid-for trip to see my very close friend before she died because this woman drained all of their energy. My best friend died without seeing me because of this woman and her entitlement. At the funeral, only my dead friend's family were supposed to speak, but the Malibu woman had written a 3-page speech that she thought she was going to give because she considers herself family. When she got up and tried to head up to the front of the church to speak, my dead friend's brother finally had enough. He stood up, grabbed this woman by the arm, and forcefully dragged her back to her seat. He was furious. I suppose it shouldn't be a surprise, but the sheer entitlement of some people who were born into money never fails to shock me. Anyway, thank you for watching.